So following on from my whether you need music theory or not argument, actually that did generate quite a polarised response. The answer is to have a bit of theory and a bit of using your ear. There are lots of people who know everything about theory, but when it comes to actually integrating into a live sort of in the deep end musical situation, sometimes the theory can get in the way. Likewise, if you're playing by ear only, you can actually sort of come unstuck if something were to sort of change in your chord sequence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some basic pointers to predict what might happen in a chord sequence. Now you could be gigging on stage, you could be playing piano, or I've got my guitar over here as well. And I'm going to use both instruments to demonstrate this. So a song is said to be in a certain key. What key are we doing this in? C. Oh, okay. Now, what that should do is invoke a series of chords in your mind that are fairly likely to be in that song. C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. Now, the chords, what you're listening out for really, you should be listening out for the bass note. La. So that when it goes to another chord, la, 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 la. That gives you the clue as to where the chord has gone. It's gone from C up to F. C to F. You could have C to G. C, D, E, F, G. And there's your G chord. So C to G. Now, various chord, well, all sorts of chord sequences are possible, so you've got to be ready for anything. Now, it's all based on this C major scale. Remember I said the tune was in C. Think of those notes as numbered 1 to 8, where 1 is the first, is the C. Then you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. And when you get to 8, it's the same as 1. So somebody might actually be shouting a chord sequence to you in numbers, not necessarily worrying too much about what the key is. So somebody might go, it goes R1, and then it goes to the 5. And you think, what's the 5? The answer is, it'll go from the 1, which is C major, to the 5, to G major. So there's your 1 to 5. So what somebody might say, oh yeah, it's a 1, 5, 6, 4. 1, 5, 6, 4. And you work that out based on what key you're in. Now in C major, everything's nice and simple because it's all natural notes. There are no sharps or flats involved. So in chords 2, 3 and 6 are usually minor in a major key. Not always, but generally speaking, the theory is that all of your chords are based on the notes of that C major scale. So when you just have the same shape and just move it up or down the piano, you are generating those chords. Written down, chords 1, 4 and 5 would be large Roman numerals, so you get like a capital I for 1, and then a capital I and a V for 4, and a capital V for 5. And then 2, 3 and 6 would be lowercase, so you get 2 little i's for 2, 3 i's for chord 3, and then a little V and a 1 for chord 6. And you can see those written above my head on the screen there. So somebody might say, oh, if you're in C, they go chord 6. It's more likely to be a minor key, a minor chord rather. Now when you're listening out for that, ma, na, na, na. Hang on, it's gone down. But it went up here. It went, the bass line was this, and then it went up to that one. But my ear said that, because I can't really sing that note, la, but I can sing this one, la. That's where the difficulty lies, and actually, you shouldn't worry too much, because this note, and this note, this, they can be considered the same. They are all the note A, for example, on the piano. So, la, la. If you go down from the first chord to the second chord, think about what it would be if you went up. La, 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 dee, la, 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 da, 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 la. So it's actually chord 6, even though it's gone down 2. However, if you think of chord 1 also as chord 8, remember what I said at the beginning, you've got 8 notes in your major scale. If the chord goes down, you could think of the first chord as chord 8, and then just take away the number of steps you go, and then from here you get 8. La, 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 8, 7, 6, and there's your chord 6. It doesn't matter if I play chord 6 like this, or like this, or like this. It doesn't matter at all. So, when you're listening out for a chord sequence, let's try this one. La, la. It's important to latch on to that bass note. La, 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 la. 1, 2, 3, and chord 4. So that's really, it revolves around a lot of practice. But really, in a major key, the most common chords that you're going to find would be chords 4, 5, and 6. That chord sequence is used a hell of a lot. So that is chords 1, 5, 6, 4, where the 6 would be lowercase Roman numerals because it's a minor chord. That chord sequence is so commonly used that if it goes from this to that, you can almost think, da, da. You know, you can make an educated guess as to what the next chord might be. Now that chord sequence, although it's used a huge amount in rock and pop composition, doesn't mean that it's samey because of the production. If you consider Jason Mraz's "I'm Yours," that's a reggae tune, you know, and it's just gone off the beaten track a bit from the standard sort of sound, you know, standard production. So, going to guitar now. The principles are exactly the same. So, for example, if I've got C, D minor, E minor, F, G, and A minor. It's useful on guitar to be able to play a C major scale, not across the neck, like that, but actually up the neck in using one finger. Because actually what that gets you used to is the distance between those chords, or the notes in the scale. For example, the distance between the first note and the second note is 2 frets, or 2 half steps, or 1 step. The distance between the second and the third note is the same. It's that 2 fret, or 2 half steps, or a full step. However, the third to the fourth is a half step. So you've got a step there, a step here, then a half step, then another step, another step, another step, and then a half step to finish. Now this really means that you have to, you can get your other keys. They're the sort of the sharps and flats. For example, B flat major, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. Now, in order to learn your scales in all 12 keys, which you would need to do in order to predict where a chord sequence might go, on guitar, you can kind of get away with it a bit because everything is patterns, whereas on piano, you've got the white notes and the black notes, and that creates issues. So on guitar, for example, if I've got C, D, E, F, those are all my natural notes. Fine. If I go to the second fret instead, to B, all I do is play the same pattern. But I might not be aware that that scale's got 5 sharps in it. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, before returning to B. So there are 5 sharps there, but as a guitarist, it's not always necessary to be aware of that because you're playing in a particular key. So actually, I'm Yours by Jason Mraz is in the key of B major. Now, of course, on guitar, you don't want to be playing all your chords in one position, but it's a really good way of learning where all those steps come and the sound of all the chords. Because actually what you can do after a while, you could play the first 4 notes like that, and then instead of moving up to there for the 5th, you could start on the 6th string. So B, C sharp minor, D sharp minor, E, F sharp, G sharp minor, and then B. Note the absence of a chord 7. Now, in rock and pop terms, you're more likely to use a chord with the flattened 7th than the 7th. That's going to be more common than this. Doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. On piano, if I play the chords of C major, the chords in the key of C major, I have C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. That's actually a chord called B diminished. Whereas in rock and pop terms, you're more likely to get a B flat chord, which is the 7th note but flattened or lowered by a half a step. But then you've got a black note in C major, which isn't actually in that scale. That's where you get other chords in, well, in any music really. You don't just get chords 1 to 6, you can get chords of the flattened 3rd, the flattened 6th, the flattened 7th. There's all sorts of possibilities, and any of those chords could be major or minor. It really just depends on the complexity, but most modern rock and pop songs do conform to this standard C, D minor, E minor, F, G and A minor, you know, where 2, 3 and 6 are minor. So playing by ear does involve, of course, trying to pitch what is called an interval, the distance between 2 notes. That's an interval of something called a perfect 4th, although most rock and pop musicians will get rid of the term perfect and just say 4th. So that's a 4th, and that's a 5th. They're both called perfect intervals. So, for example, twist and shout uses chords 1, 4 and 5. A 12-bar blues uses chords 1, 4 and 5. So actually practicing a blues or something like that, you know, twist and shout, being able to pitch that on a guitar, just using chords 1, 4 and 5 to start off with is actually a really good idea, because you're just chipping away at that sort of the theory that you need. So something like, a blues, for example, starts in chord 1. Then it goes to chord 4, back to chord 1, chord 5, chord 4, chord 1. So there are those 3 chords. You've got chord 1, chord 4 and chord 5. Now, lots of people who are sort of really au fait with their music theory, perhaps the sort of orchestral fraternity or jazz musicians, would go, well, that song's boring. It's only got 3 chords in it. However, we are always playing to the song, sort of, to the title of the song. We're playing for the vocalist. So actually you can really simplify things. And twist and shout, 3 chords. Some songs only have 2 chords, Horse with No Name. Now, listening to the bass notes there, you've got la, 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 la. It's only a step. So I was in E minor. Now a step on the piano, this is where your black notes have to come into play. E to F is only a half step because there's no black note between those 2 notes. So it goes actually E to F sharp. It's E minor, to F sharp minor 7 sus 4. Don't worry about the name. In terms of things like minor 7s, major 7s, all that sort of thing, really, to start with, just concentrate on majors or minors because they will do. This is F sharp minor 7 sus 4. But this is F sharp minor. It's just a slightly plainer version. The same if I did C to D minor 7 sus 4. Actually, D minor is that. That one just sounds a bit more expensive. It's like the sort of the gold version. But that D minor 7 sus 4 chord still had the notes in the key of C major. So actually there wasn't a huge amount extra going on there. I was just smattering it with a few other pitches in C major. Actually in D minor you could do this. That's using all 7 notes. So D minors on the piano is a really nice thing to play over. On guitar you could do the same sort of thing. If I played a C and then I went to D minor, there's my C to D minor. I could do this. I could just decorate it up, but all of those notes, maybe something like that. There we go. That's D minor 7 sus 4. Nice. Now the bass notes there, D minor. What's that going to be? La, la. It went down from D. So I'm going to call D chord 8 then. La, la, la. So I went down actually to chord 4 because I took away, I had 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, like that. So we also have, in addition to major chords, major keys that songs are in, we also got minor keys. Now, the easiest way to get started with those is to say, well, actually, chord 6 in a major key, there's chord 6, remember, da, da, 8, 7, 6. Chord 6 is actually called the relative minor. Now, each major key has a cousin that shares a lot of the same characteristics. So, A minor is the relative minor of C major. It's like putting the King Edward VII and the Kaiser next to each other on horseback. They're basically the same person. C and A minor. So, what we can do with this chord sequence, remember this one from the beginning where we had 1, 5, 6, 4. If we started on 6 and played exactly the same order, so it went 6, 4, 1, 5. Now, that's still in the key of C major. If I say it's in the key of A minor, that means that A minor becomes chord 1. That means that F is chord 6. C is chord 3. G is chord 7. So in a minor key, you can have chord 7. Actually, chord 2 in a minor key is the sort of one that's not really, it's like chord 7 in a major key. A minor and C major share a key signature. So, for example, the natural minor scale on A does this. Just goes from A to A with no sharps or flats, they're all natural notes. So, for example, chord 1, chord 3, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, chord 7, and then chord 8, if you like, at the top. So, that sequence that was in C major, 1, 5, 6, 4, now becomes 1, 6, and then you've got 3 and 7. Getting mixed up with my figures. No, it's fine. I got there. So, the reason this is, I tend not to use this system because I have what's called absolute pitch, so I can name a note on the piano. It doesn't matter, you know, if I can get that from with no external source. So when I play by ear, I do it a lot different, you know, differently to people without absolute pitch. But most people have got relative pitch. What that means is that if you played a note and somebody says sing this one, usually you can work it out. So if there's an A here, sing an E, A, B, C, D, E. And there it is. So it's a very good idea to sit either at a piano or your guitar. Oh, I'll just bash it to bits first. So if you know that's an A, an E, and you can practice it using your lateral steps and half steps. Now, once you know what key something's in, and you can do that if you're listening to a CD or whatever, MP3, whatever, and you want to get the chords, first of all, you have to establish what the key is. The key is not always the first chord, but it's pretty much always, in the case of a song that doesn't have a fade, it's pretty much the last chord. So if you know what the key is, you can then listen to that record and home in on the bass notes. Now, there is, however, one very slight problem. If the bass note isn't the main note of the chord, that can be a bit tricky. If I've got C here, and A minor, We know that's chord 1 to chord 6, or chord 8. 8, 7, 6. What happens though, if we put a chord in between, what's chord 7, but we don't have a chord 7. The answer is it's a note that can be contained within another chord, and this is a G chord. Now, a G chord has a B in it, which was what that bass was. C, G with a B in the bass, A minor, C with a G in the bass, F, C with an E in the bass, D minor, and C. So you can actually have a bass line that falls. In that case, what you have to do is you have to, when you're trying to work out what the chord is, you do have to you have to play with the chords that you know are available. So in the case of C major, you've got chords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you hear this, as you see, you can hear that. You think, okay, well, is it going to be chord 2? No. Chord 3? No. Chord 4? Chord 5? There it is. So you get used to this because actually the way that different bass notes are used in chords really is almost as conventional as the series of chords that you have. So there we go. There is an introduction to learning something by ear, or being able to predict what might happen next.